Hello and welcome to the 2021 French GP strategy analysis for Ferrari, where we'll be looking at a comparison of their strategy, position movements, and race pace. If you would like to see videos about other teams or a race overview video, then head across to the F1 strategy channel. Let's get into it. So looking at the strategy, one of the few teams with clearly a split strategy here, with Leclerc coming in very early. His tyres were falling off a cliff very quickly and had just been passed by Ricciardo and Norris. And as a result, he came in very early and his hards also started really falling off a cliff, so they had to bring him in again towards the end. So a two-stop strategy, but I'm not sure that was necessarily a two-stop strategy by plan. And Sainz was able to keep those first tyres going a little bit longer, but from a race pace perspective, just not a very successful weekend from Ferrari, unfortunately. As they alluded to at the start of the weekend, back to reality. So looking here, Sainz starting 5th and Leclerc 7th, so both had great qualifying pace, but if we look at Sainz, was able to hold 5th the entire first segment, and Gasly right behind him, couldn't get quite past. And once he pitted, did a good job at making up some positions, but then unfortunately just really started to fall away, and those on fresher tyres such as Norris, Vettel and Stroll coming back and overtaking. Leclerc, in comparison, held 7th for a while there, and then Ricciardo and Norris getting him on that lap that he actually pitted, and then made a great jump up as the others came through, and he actually undercut a lot of people in front of him, including Gasly, Sainz and Ricciardo. But unfortunately, whilst he did make it back to 7th, his tyres then really did start falling off a cliff and just did not have the pace to stay with them. And they, in the end, decided to do that second stop. And that's pretty much where the race ended up for Leclerc and Ferrari. So let's have a look at the race pace between the two teammates. So Leclerc ahead at the top here and Sainz ahead down the bottom. Sainz holding that position through the first stint and reasonably comfortable compared to Leclerc there. Not massive pace differential between the two, but about a 2.5 second gap. Then we had Leclerc pitting, and first lap took quite a bit out of Sainz, and then Sainz pitted, and Leclerc ahead, but not by a significant margin here after those pit stops, and then just through the undercut did a great job. And then reasonably equal pace for those 10 laps, and then Leclerc's tyres really started to fade away, and Sainz was able to get past him, and then Leclerc pitted again, and as you can imagine with those fresh tyres, as we saw for most of the races this weekend, those first 5-6 laps pretty quick on the fresh tyres, but then they also started to decay a little bit, so in the end, about 22.5 seconds between the two Ferrari drivers, and Sainz clearly coming out ahead, although neither driver in the points. So let's just look at all the lap times, including the pit stops. So you can see there the first 15 laps really quite similar between the two drivers, not much of a gap. And then Leclerc, once he pits, obviously quicker than Sainz for those few laps, and that's why the undercut was so strong, how much quicker he was. And then relatively equal initially, but then Leclerc's tyres really started to go off for a while there, and then had to pit again, and was predictably quicker than Sainz for those 5 laps, but even then really started to mellow out after that one, and really Leclerc wasn't battling for points at that stage, so stripping out those pit stops just to get a bit of a more detailed view at it. You can see here just the strength of the undercut there really delivered that jump up for Leclerc. It's so many people, but again, those tyres for Leclerc started to go off, and then fresh set, and 1.5 seconds quicker, but in the end, relatively equal to finish off the race. So now just looking at a bit of a comparison there for every single lap, really equal through the first 15 laps, as we saw with pretty much all the drivers in the top 10. And then Leclerc significantly quicker here, and this is the undercut strength as we've seen, this pit stop from Sainz there. They're relatively equal through there, but then Leclerc's tyres started to go, and once Leclerc got the quicker tyres, excellent quick here. It's these laps here actually right before Leclerc pitted were actually relatively quick, but could have been Sainz getting caught up in some traffic there, and then relatively equal to finish off the race. So final look at the drivers here, a bit of a histogram of who was quicker. So Sainz quicker if it's on the left hand side and Leclerc on the right hand side. Sainz definitely with a greater number of quick laps, obviously, given the results. But quite notably for the Ferrari drivers, both of them 6 times were quicker by more than 2 seconds compared to their teammate, which is quite a significant number. And that's often just because Leclerc's tyres went off and got brand new tyres, whereas Sainz had older tyres. So there you go, wrap from Ferrari at the French GP. Not the best weekend for them, and Sainz definitely taking the cake out of the 2 teammates. If you liked the video, give it a big thumbs up, hit the subscribe button. Any comments or feedback, pop it in the comments, and feel free to check out the other videos from the race weekend. Thank you.